600 hours, 30,000 feet above the Allied coastline. The sun crests the eastern horizon, painting the stratocumulus clouds in burning shades of orange and violet. Inside the bubble canopy of the lead fighter jet, the only sound is the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen regulator and the steady low hum of the twin engines. The world below is a quilt of deep blue ocean and jagged green islands, appearing peaceful and completely silent. The pilot adjusts his grip on the control stick and scans the empty blue expanse. Condensation trails from the wingtips dissipate into the thin air. A sharp electronic warble cuts through the headset. The radar screen, previously empty, blooms with a sudden cluster of angry red markers. They are not drifting like civilian traffic. They are closing at supersonic speeds. The pilot stiffens. He snaps the stick hard to the left. The jet banks violently, the wingtip slicing through the cloud layer. Contact front, multiple bogies, high aspect, the radio crackles. The peaceful morning shatters instantly. Far ahead, tiny glints of metal sparkle against the rising sun. It is not a patrol. It is an invasion force. The pilot flips the master arm switch. The safety cover clicks up. He thumbs the weapon selector to long-range missiles. Break formation, combat spread. The flight lead barks over the comms. The two fighter jets separate immediately, putting 2 miles of distance between their wings to complicate the enemy's targeting solution. They push their throttles forward to the stops. The engines roar, dumping raw fuel into the exhaust. Afterburners ignite with a concussive thud. Twin cones of blue flame shoot from the rear nozzles. The G-force slams the pilots back into their ejection seats, crushing their chests against the flight harness. The jets tear through the sound barrier, a white vapor cone forming and vanishing in a split second. The distance to the enemy closes rapidly. 6:05 hours, forward airbase, Allied coastal sector. The facility sits nestled between rolling green hills and the gray ocean. Morning mist clings heavily to the black asphalt of the main runway. Near the hangars, mechanics lean against yellow fuel trucks, holding steaming mugs of coffee. The base is quiet, save for the distant lonely cry of seabirds circling the control tower. A light breeze ruffles the windsock. The calmness dies instantly. A red strobe light begins to rotate atop the operations building. The air raid siren starts with a low mechanical groan. It rises quickly, peaking into a deafening wail that vibrates the chest and drowns out the ocean. Double doors to the pilot-ready room fly open. 6 pilots burst onto the tarmac. They sprint toward the line of parked fighter jets, helmets tucked under their arms, flight suits zipped high. Their boots pound rhythmically against the concrete. Ground crews swarm the aircraft like angry ants. One mechanic leaps onto a wing, yanking the red "remove before flight" streamers from the missile hardpoints. Another crewman slams the ammunition panel shut on the jet's internal cannon, locking it with a heavy metallic clack. The lead pilot vaults up the ladder. He drops into the cockpit seat. He connects his oxygen mask and flips the master power switch. The dashboard lights up with green and amber displays. Outside, the fuel hose disconnects with a sharp hiss of pressurized vapor. The canopy glass lowers and locks into place, sealing the pilot inside. Turbines begin to spin. The engines ignite with a high-pitched whine that rapidly deepens into a chest-thumping roar. Heat shimmer distorts the air behind the exhaust nozzles, blurring the view of the hangars. The smell of burnt kerosene floods the flight line. The ground crew chief signals with a frantic wave of glowing batons. He points down the runway. The jets lurch forward. Tires screech against the pavement as the aircraft turn sharply onto the taxiway. They line up on the runway threshold, engines pulsing against the brakes, looking like predators ready to spring. The noise is absolute. 20 hours, runway 10 forward airbase. The sheer power of the engines shakes the ground for miles. Heat waves distort the surrounding hills into a shimmering mirage. The asphalt radiates the morning heat, smelling of tar and burnt rubber. The 6 fighter jets sit poised at the end of the strip, canopies gleaming in the sunlight. Their engines cycle, a deep, resonant thrum that vibrates inside the chest cavities of the ground crew. Wind calm, cleared for takeoff. Good hunting, the tower controller announces. The voice is flat, professional. The lead pilot slams the throttle forward to the stop. He cracks the afterburner detent. A 20-foot tongue of blue-white fire erupts from the rear nozzle. The jet shudders violently against the brakes, straining like a chained beast. The pilot releases the brake pedal. The aircraft surges forward. Tires bite into the concrete. Speed climbs rapidly. 100 knots, 150. The marker boards blur into a continuous white streak. The nose wheel lifts off the ground. The main landing gear leaves the runway. The heavy struts fold into the fuselage with a mechanical thud. The gear doors snap shut. The jet pitches up. It climbs vertically, rocketing straight into the cloud deck. The 5 wingmen follow in rapid succession, a chain of thunder cracking the sky. They punch through the cloud layer and level off at 30,000 feet. The sunlight here is blinding. High above the combat zone, a massive AWACS aircraft circles slowly. Inside the windowless fuselage, radar operators hunch over glowing green screens. A dense cluster of hostile red tracks pushes steadily toward the blue line. "Razor flight, this is magic," the controller calls. Vector 270, massive group, 30-plus bandits, heavy bombers trailing. "Copy magic, engaging," the squadron leader replies. The pilots check their weapons systems. The squadron fans out into a wall of steel. They push their throttles past the military power limit. Fuel pumps dump massive amounts of kerosene into the exhaust chambers. The afterburners ignite again. The jets accelerate past Mach 1. The sonic boom hits the ocean below, sending a shockwave rippling across the water. The distance counter on the heads-up display ticks down rapidly. The radar warning receivers begin to chirp. Yellow spikes appear on the azimuth display. The enemy radar is painting them. The air war has begun. 6 and 28 hours, 30,000 feet. The atmosphere is thin and lethal. Sunlight strikes the canopy glass with blinding intensity. The squadron cuts through the cold air, leaving white contrails that mark their path. Inside the cockpit, the pilot grips the throttle, knuckles white against the black plastic. The radar warning receiver wails a constant piercing tone. The digital display flashes red. The horizon fills with metal. Black specks resolve into terrifying shapes. A phalanx of heavy bombers pushes forward, engines churning out dark exhaust. Swarms of agile enemy fighter jets protect them, weaving around the larger aircraft like angry wasps. The scale of the attack is undeniable. Tally visual, 12 o'clock low, the radio crackles. The enemy escorts spot the threat. They break formation instantly. The enemy fighters invert and dive, accelerating to intercept the U.S. flight. They close the distance in seconds. The air between the two forces charges with kinetic energy. "Stay on target, hit the bombers," the squadron leader commands. The merge happens. The two formations pass each other at Mach 2. It is a blur of gray steel and roaring noise. The shockwave from the passing jets slams into the U.S. aircraft, shaking the airframes violently. The enemy fighters bank hard, turning to pursue. They launch short-range missiles. Smoke trails streak across the blue sky. The U.S. pilots shout warnings. They thumb the countermeasure switches. Flares eject from the rear fuselages. Balls of magnesium burn white-hot, creating a false heat signature. A missile swerves, locking onto a flare. It detonates in a puff of black smoke and shrapnel, missing the tail of a U.S. jet by yards. The formation holds together, punching through the screen to reach the bombers. 6:30 hours, 20,000 feet. The sky is a chaotic web of twisting white contrails. The screaming of engines drowns out all thought. The U.S. squadron pushes toward the heavy bombers, ignoring the enemy fighters swarming behind them. The lead pilot centers the targeting reticle on the nearest bomber. The massive aircraft looms large in the glass display, its rear turret guns spitting glowing tracer rounds. The orange streaks zip past the U.S. cockpit, missing the canopy by inches. The weapons computer achieves a lock. A high-pitched tone screams in the pilot's headset. He squeezes the trigger on the flight stick. "Fox 2!" he shouts. The Sidewinder missile detaches from the wing rail with a metallic clunk. The rocket motor ignites instantly. A trail of white smoke marks its lethal path. The missile accelerates to Mach 3, closing the gap in a heartbeat. It slams directly into the starboard engine of the lead bomber. The explosion is absolute. A fireball erupts, tearing the engine mount from the fuselage. Shrapnel rips through the bomber's fuel tanks. The right wing shears off completely. The heavy aircraft rolls violently to the right, vomiting black smoke and fire. It enters a flat spin, plummeting toward the ocean like a stone. Behind the U.S. formation, the enemy fighters open fire. Automatic cannons spray rounds at the American jets. Bullets spark off the composite armor of a wingman's jet. "Braking right!" the wingman yells. He yanks the stick hard over. His jet rolls inverted and dives, dispensing a fresh volley of flares to confuse the heat-seeking sensors. The enemy formation splinters, half staying with the bombers, half diving to chase the lone American fighter. The sky fills with the geometry of death. 6:35 hours, 15,000 feet. The sky is a tangled mess of smoke trails and screaming metal. The organized formation is gone. The engagement degrades into a chaotic furball. Fighter jets twist and turn in a desperate dance, engines howling as pilots push their machines to the breaking point. The air smells of ozone and burnt propellant. The U.S. squadron leader yanks the control stick back into his gut. His fighter jet pitches up violently, entering a high G turn. The G-suit inflates instantly, squeezing his legs to keep blood in his brain. His vision grays at the edges. He grunts, forcing air into his lungs against the crushing pressure. Vapor pours off the wing surfaces as the jet claws through the humid air. An enemy fighter jet cuts across his nose, banking hard to the left. The enemy pilot tries to scissors the maneuver, reversing direction to force an overshoot. The U.S. pilot slams the air brake switch. Large panels pop open on the fuselage. The jet decelerates rapidly, shuddering as the drag catches it. The enemy fighter flies right past the canopy, close enough to see the rivets on the fuselage. "Guns, guns, guns!" the U.S. pilot shouts. He stomps the rudder pedal. The nose swings onto the enemy tail. He squeezes the trigger. The internal rotary cannon roars. The vibration rattles the pilot's teeth. A stream of tracers erupts from the nose, tearing through the sky like a whip of fire. The rounds impact the enemy's left wing. High explosive shells detonate on contact. Aluminum shreds. The wingtip shears off in a cloud of sparks and debris. Hydraulic fluid sprays into the slipstream, igniting instantly against the hot engine exhaust. The enemy jet enters an uncontrollable roll. It corkscrews down toward the whitecaps below. "Bandit 2, 6 o'clock," the wingman warns. The U.S. pilot slams the throttle forward. The afterburner kicks in with a jolt. He brakes right, diving toward the cloud deck to shake the new attacker. Tracers zip past his canopy, leaving glowing green streaks in his peripheral vision. 6:40 hours, 5,000 feet coastal approach vector. The primary dogfight rages high above, a distant rumble of thunder. Down here, the air is thick and humid. The ocean surface rushes by in a blur of gray waves and white foam. The skyline of the Allied coastal city glimmers on the horizon, bathed in the morning light. It looks fragile. A massive shadow drops from the cloud base. The surviving enemy bomber levels out. Smoke trails from its number 3 engine, staining the sky black, but the aircraft flies true. It is a flying fortress of aluminum and steel. The pilot drives the behemoth toward the city. Hydraulic pumps whine. The massive bomb bay doors underneath the fuselage creak open. Rows of unguided iron bombs hang in the darkness of the bay, armed and ready. "Leaker! Leaker! Low altitude, heading 270, the AWACS controller screams. 2 U.S. fighter jets peel away from the high-altitude furball. They roll inverted. They pull the nose down. Gravity grabs them. They dive toward the ocean, accelerating past the speed of sound. The airframes shake violently as they punch through the lower atmosphere. The altimeter unwinds like a spinning clock. 10,000, 8,000, 5,000. The bomber's rear gunner spots the pursuit. The turret spins. Twin cannons open fire. Orange tracers lace the air, creating a wall of fire between the fighters and the bomber. "Jinking left!" the lead U.S. pilot yells. He stomps the rudder pedal. The jet slides sideways, slipping through the stream of gunfire. A round clips his vertical stabilizer, tearing a chunk of composite material away. The jet shudders but holds its course. The pilot ignores the warning lights. He lines up the Piper on the bomber's wing route. The distance closes to less than half a mile. The city looms larger in the windshield. The bomber is seconds away from the release point. The U.S. pilot flips the weapon selector to gun. He squeezes the trigger. The rotary cannon roars, vibrating the entire cockpit. Shells impact the bomber's fuselage. Sparks fly as rounds chew through the aluminum skin. The enemy gunner keeps firing, desperate to drive them off. Tracers hammer the U.S. jet's canopy glass, leaving spiderweb cracks in the reinforced polycarbonate. The pilot does not flinch. He holds the trigger down. The cannon empties its magazine. 645 hours, coastal defense perimeter. The beach is no longer a place of leisure. Camouflage netting flies off hidden concrete bunkers. Hydraulic motors whine as massive quad-barreled anti-aircraft guns spin up to firing speed. The radar tracking system locks onto the low-flying behemoth approaching the city limits. The air smells of salt spray and imminent violence. "Batteries release! Clear the sky!" the ground commander yells over the radio. The ground shakes. A battery of surface-to-air missiles ignites. 4 rockets scream off the launch rails, riding pillars of white fire into the sky. Simultaneously, the anti-aircraft cannons open up. A wall of tracer fire and high-explosive shells erupts from the coastline, creating a dense curtain of steel directly in the flight path. "Friendly fire! Break off! Break off!" the U.S. flight lead screams. The U.S. pilots react on instinct. They slam their throttles to idle and bank hard away from the bomber, pulling 9Gs to escape the kill zone. The G-suit squeezes their legs until it hurts. The edges of their vision go black. The sky ahead turns into a meat grinder. The flak shells detonate, filling the air with jagged shrapnel and black puffs of smoke. The enemy bomber flies straight into the storm. The first surface-to-air missile impacts the bomber's nose. The explosion shreds the cockpit. The glass shatters into a million diamonds. The pilots inside are vaporized instantly. The massive aircraft shudders as the second and third missiles slam into the fuselage and the left wing. The structural integrity fails. The bomber breaks in half mid-air. The fuselage snaps with a sound like a cracking whip, audible even over the roar of the engines. The payload of unguided bombs spills out, tumbling harmlessly into the ocean surf just hundreds of yards from the beach. The wreckage turns into a fireball, tumbling end over end before crashing into the shallow water. A massive geyser of steam and water shoots 300 feet into the air. The U.S. fighters level off, shaking from the near miss. Warning lights flash on their dashboards. They are alive, but the sky above is still full of enemies. 650 hours, 20,000 feet. The air battle drags on, fueled by desperation. Thick columns of black smoke stand like pillars in the sky, marking the graves of fallen aircraft. The surviving U.S. fighter jets weave through the debris field, their fuel gauges dipping dangerously low. The sun is higher now, casting harsh shadows across the instrument panels. The radio chatter is breathless, a cacophony of warnings and grunt-forced shouts. "Missile inbound! Brake left!" A panicked voice screams. It is too late. A heat-seeking missile corkscrews through the exhaust plume of Razor 2. It impacts the starboard engine nozzle. The explosion shears the entire tail section off the aircraft. The fighter jet violently pitches nose down, tumbling end over end like a discarded toy. Fire engulfs the fuselage. "I'm hit! Punching out!" The canopy glass blasts away with a sharp report. 2 seconds later, the ejection seat rocket ignites. A trail of white smoke shoots upward from the burning wreck. The pilot clears the spinning debris. The drogue chute pops, followed instantly by the main canopy. An orange and white parachute blooms against the blue sky. The empty jet falls away, crashing into the ocean below. The squadron leader witnesses the hit. He does not hesitate. He spots the attacker, an enemy fighter jet painted with a red shark mouth on the nose. The enemy pilot banks hard, circling back to strafe the defenseless pilot hanging in the parachute. "Not today," the leader growls into his mask. He slams the stick over. His jet rolls onto its side and slices through the air, intercepting the enemy's path. The enemy pilot reacts, abandoning the parachute to engage the new threat. The two jets merge, passing canopy to canopy. The enemy pulls a tight loop, slotting perfectly onto the leader's 6 o'clock position. The radar lock tone screams a solid, high-pitched wail in the leader's headset. The leader executes the trap. He chops the throttle to idle. He slams the air brake switch. He yanks the stick back with both hands. The U.S. fighter jet defies physics. The nose rears up 90 degrees, the belly of the aircraft acting as a massive air brake. The forward momentum dies instantly. The jet hangs suspended in the air, stalling completely. The enemy pilot, caught off guard by the sudden deceleration, has no time to react. His jet screams past the stalled U.S. aircraft, missing the cockpit by feet. The overshoot is fatal. The leader slams the throttle to max afterburner. He kicks the rudder, dropping the nose. The engine roars to life, pushing the jet forward. He is now directly behind the enemy. Fox 2. He squeezes the trigger. The Sidewinder missile leaps off the rail. It covers the short distance in a blink. It slams into the enemy's fuselage. The explosion vaporizes the enemy jet in a ball of expanding fire and shredded aluminum. No ejection seat fires. 700 hours. Western horizon. The morning sun climbs higher, illuminating a battlefield scarred by black smoke and drifting debris. Inside the squadron leader's cockpit, the low fuel caution light flashes a rhythmic, taunting amber. The oxygen mask feels heavy against his sweat-soaked face. He taps the glass of the fuel gauge, but the needle sits stubbornly near the empty mark. His remaining wingmen drift closer, their aircraft riddled with bullet holes and scorch marks. They are running on fumes. The radar screen refreshes. The surviving enemy fighters regroup to the east. They sense the vulnerability. They turn as one, lighting their afterburners to finish the crippled squadron. The distance counter drops rapidly. 10 miles, 8 miles. The leader grips the stick, preparing to ram the lead enemy jet if necessary. The radio crackles. A new voice cuts through the static. Calm, clear, and loud. Razor Flight, this is VFA 103. Check fire to the east. We have the solution. The cloud bank behind the U.S. squadron erupts. It does not rain water, it rains fire. A wall of white smoke trails arcs over the heads of the Air Force jets. Dozens of long-range air-to-air missiles scream past, their rocket motors burning bright orange. The noise is deafening, a continuous tear in the fabric of the sky. The missiles accelerate to Mach 4. They close the gap to the enemy formation in seconds. The enemy pilots attempt to scatter, but the saturation is too dense. The sky lights up with a chain reaction of detonations. The lead missiles slam into the enemy formation. Explosions blossom in rapid succession. Fighter jets disintegrate mid-turn. Wings spiral away from burning fuselages. Canopies shatter. The air fills with a storm of falling aluminum and burning fuel. Through the smoke of the missile trails, 4 Navy F-A-18 Super Hornets scream past the beleaguered Air Force jets. Their wings are laden with fresh ordnance. The roar of their engines shakes the leader's cockpit glass, a physical wave of kinetic energy. They bank hard, diving into the debris field to hunt down any stragglers. "Good to see you, Navy," the squadron leader breathes into the mask. He toggles the mic. "Razor flight, come left. Let's get out of their way." 0710 hours, combat airspace, Sector 4. The sky is no longer a swarm of angry metal. It is a graveyard. Columns of black smoke rise from the ocean surface like dark monuments, marking where aircraft slammed into the water. The air is clearer now, though the smell of ozone and burning fuel lingers in the cockpit air systems. The sun glares off the whitecaps below. The remnants of the enemy strike force abandon all formation. They dive toward the deck, desperate to escape the radar lock of the fresh American fighters. They jettison external fuel tanks and remaining ordnance. Bombs splash harmlessly into the sea, creating white geysers as the enemy pilots trade weight for speed. They ignite their afterburners, creating white vapor cones as they flee toward the horizon. The Navy Super Hornets do not let them go gently. 2 Navy jets dive in pursuit. They slot in behind the trailing enemy aircraft. The Navy pilots squeeze their triggers. Rotary cannons buzz like angry chainsaws. Tracers splash against the water around the fleeing jets. One enemy aircraft takes a round to the tail stabilizer. It shudders violently, dips a wing, and cartwheels into the ocean at 600 knots. The impact disintegrates the machine instantly. "Splash 1, breaking off," the Navy pilot calls coolly. High above, the Air Force squadron leader scans his fuel panel. The numbers are critical. The digital readout flashes red. The engine temperature gauges hover near the red line. The airframe vibrates, complaining from the stress of the high G maneuvers. "Razor flight, reference heading 090, RTB immediately. We are bingo fuel," the leader commands. His voice is raspy from dehydration and the strain of the G-forces. The battered Air Force jets turn slowly away from the battle. They do not bank hard. They turn gently to conserve every drop of kerosene. The engines whine, sounding tired. They leave the combat zone behind. The Navy jets now just silver specks in the distance, mopping up the retreat. The silence returns to the cockpit, heavier than before. 7:30 hours, forward airbase, runway threshold. The morning heat haze returns, shimmering off the black asphalt. Silence hangs heavy over the airfield, broken only by the idle rumble of heavy diesel engines. Yellow fire trucks and white ambulances line the taxiway, their lights flashing rhythmically. Ground crews stand in clusters, shielding their eyes against the sun, scanning the northern sky. The windsock hangs limp. The smell of burnt rubber and anxiety permeates the air. "Visual contact 3 miles out," the tower controller announces. 4 black specks appear against the blue. They are not the sleek silhouettes that left an hour ago. They are ragged. One trails a thin wisp of gray smoke. They descend steeply, dropping their landing gear. The first 2 fighter jets touch down. Tires screech against the concrete. Blue smoke puffs from the rubber. Drag chutes bloom from their tails, slowing the exhausted machines. They taxi off the active runway, their engines whining down. The third jet approaches. It wobbles. The left main landing gear hangs halfway down, swinging loosely in the slipstream. Battle damage has severed the hydraulic line. Fluid sprays from the wheel well, misting into the air. "Razor 3, check gear. Your left side is unsafe," the tower warns. "I have no hydraulics. Coming in anyway," the pilot replies. The voice is strained. The jet crosses the fence. The pilot cuts the engine. The nose flares up. The right wheel touches the ground. The pilot fights the stick, trying to keep the left wing up. Speed bleeds off. The lift vanishes. The left wing drops. It slams into the runway. The sound is a sickening metallic shriek. Sparks erupt in a massive shower, trailing behind the jet like a comet's tail. The aircraft spins violently to the left. The nose gear collapses. The fuselage grinds against the concrete, shedding sheets of aluminum skin. The friction ignites the leaking hydraulic fluid. Fire engulfs the left side of the aircraft. The wreck slides for 300 yards before grinding to a halt off the side of the runway. The silence returns for a split second. Then the sirens scream. The yellow trucks roar onto the tarmac. They surround the burning jet in seconds. Water cannons atop the trucks unleash torrents of white suppression foam. The chemical sludge blankets the fire, choking the oxygen. Men in silver heat suits sprint toward the cockpit, axes in hand. The canopy detonates. The explosive bolts fire, blasting the glass clear of the wreck. The pilot climbs out. He stumbles down the side of the fuselage, sliding onto the foam-covered grass. He falls to his knees. He rips the oxygen mask from his face. He is covered in sweat and soot. He gives a thumbs up to the approaching medics. On the far taxiway, the squadron leader pops his canopy open. He leans his head back against the seat, listening to the sirens, and takes a deep breath of the humid, salty air. The engines wind down into silence.